All right. Sorry, we had a little bit of technical difficulties. I am not used to setting this up. This is only my second time setting up a live. So I appreciate everybody being here. Welcome to Real Life, Real Faith with Seth. Today I have a special guest with me, a way better guest than I have on the dinner tables, which is my dad. Now I
Yeah,
have
for
my
sure.
mom. But today's a really exciting one. Me and my mom have talked about this a lot. This has been something that we have, from the inception of the Williams dinner table, we've talked about this
Mhm.
a lot because I work obviously in ministry. My dad works in ministry, but my mom also plays a role and works very heavily with things of faith. She doesn't just have a secular job. So it actually works out really well. And so I'm excited to bring her on. I'm going to let her talk a little bit about her expertise and the things in which that she's involved in because they're going to set up our conversation for today. So just to open it up to you, Mom, which by the way, I'm going to call her Mom. I can't help it, but it is Lenora Williams.
I'll
Uh,
try not to call him little man.
yeah, but so I'm gonna pass it over to her and have her kind of just tell everybody about herself. Tell everybody about your kind of career and kind of your expertise when it comes to kind of our topic for today.
Sure. Well, hello everybody. I'm Lenora Williams. Again, I'm Seth's mom. I'm Carrie Williams' wife, and I've been a minister's wife for over 30 years. So I've played a strong role in ministry as well. But my career, separately from that, I've been in education. So I kind of started off in the early years when my kids were little, working at a preschool, became the director of that preschool. So got to know a lot about just little children, little small toddlers and things like that and the way they develop. That I went on to finishing out my education. And over the course of my time, I ended up staying mainly in higher education.
Mm-hmm.
One short period of time, I worked in the guidance counselor's office at a local high school. So I got to see that aspect of getting kids to college. But that's really what developed my kind of love for just this whole higher ed situation. So I've worked at Arkansas State University. I have a master's degree in college student personnel services, which is kind of a odd title, but it's an overall view of all services that would help a college student and the development of a college student. And that's where I've
Mm-hmm.
learned a lot about just in general, the progression of how our brains work at that age,
Yeah.
what we're going through at that age, and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then now I've ended up the last 5 years, I've been at Freed Hardman University as a recruiter for several different states. And
Mm-hmm.
I do work remote, but I mainly just work with incoming freshmen. So it's kind of nice because I've seen all the background of it. I've had my
Mm-hmm.
own personal kids in it. And then now I see on this end of it. So I really feel
Yeah.
like I have a lot of knowledge in this area of people this age.
So how many years does that make for working with between high school and college age kids?
I probably started probably 15
Yeah.
years in higher ed.
Yeah.
And
So
then
between high schoolers, college kids,
mhm,
just in that world. Well, and that's really the reason this kind of all came
maybe a
about.
little longer.
Yeah. And so
Yeah,
honestly,
about
that's the
15.
reason this all came about is because if you looked at the thumbnail, which I hope you did, you'll understand that this whole podcast is going to be about, talking about kind of where are our kids going? Why are we losing kids? And I mean, let's just be real here. That's one of the hardest generations for us
Yes.
as ministers, as churches, is we have struggled to retain children. We've struggled, and just the other day I was talking to my wife about this. She made the comment of, oh, well, look how many kids we have at 11 and 12 and 13. Like, we're going to have the
Hmm.
biggest youth group
All the
around.
time.
And then
Yes.
I told her, I said, but here's the thing, they've said that forever.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so, and now I hope that we can develop that,
Hmm.
but they've said this forever. And so my thought is this is a thing that all churches need to hear. So for our audience, whether you're somebody who's going to be going into high school or college and need this information, great. Or whether you're somebody at a church that's like, okay, where are our kids going? You want to know, this should be helpful to you. But also,
Hmm.
we're going to hopefully get to talk about a little bit of solutions and things that we see that can help. Because we need to work on reaching that generation, work on reaching the kids who are leaving the church, and ultimately the families. What I've found is a lot of times when a kid leaves the church, so does the family, because parents are really tied to what their kids are doing. And
Right.
so,
It's hard. Hmm.
well,
And it's hard to have the
it
conflict
is,
within the family unit
yeah.
when you start having different beliefs. So, absolutely.
So kind of to open up to you, I feel like I already know the answer, but you know a lot more about this topic because you see these age ranges. What age range do you think that kids leave the church most, or most risk to leave the church?
Well, so statistically saying, it's just not from my experience, but statistically saying, they say from like the ages of 18 to 24 is when we lose our kids the most to the world.
Mm,
And so a lot of times it's that gap when they're getting out of mom and dad's home, when they have gone, they've grown up most of their life and
mhm,
have always been under mom and dad's not just rule,
yeah,
but protection, thoughts, schedule,
mhm,
just kind of that's the way our family's always been. And then they get out on their own and they have to start time management on their own. They
mhm,
have to start um, kind of answering questions and kind of developing who they're going to be as a person, what their beliefs are, and they don't have that protection from mom and dad, and it starts to develop in their own thoughts. And so it
mm,
is very important on who's influencing your family and your
mm,
children at that time.
mm. So you see, that's really interesting because I just did a lesson where I was talking using this as an example, the difference between the parents that throw their kids to the wolves and just
Hmm.
like, you know, kids are gone, they don't know where they are at 10 years old versus the kind of helicopter parent
Yes.
style. But it seems as if both kind of play a role into this. And I
Hmm.
just want to open it up to you and ask, being somebody who's worked with, I don't know how many students you've worked with,
Oh, well, I
but
couldn't say
more
probably.
in an innumerable number.
Hmm.
um, Kind of from your experience, how much has the parenting style you think played an effect in the kids at that age range being more or less at risk?
Right. And it is kind of interesting because, as much as there's a lot of common things in this, and you see common things as you work with college students and students in general at this age, I really do find there's not an exact, it's not a black and white. It's not if you do this, this happens. And the reason why I say that is because you'll always have that one that will kind of just do something different. You say, like, oh, this kid's going to turn out this way because of some of the things that you see, and then boom, there's something different. So
Yeah.
again, I always like to
So it's
talk,
not an exact science.
these are
Yeah.
principles, but I will
That's
say
so good though, because I mean, scripture's that way,
that's
and
right.
like the book of Proverbs,
Proverbs,
right? You know,
absolutely.
train up a child in the way that they should go, and they should not depart from it.
Right.
Talks about discipline. Talks about that's not an exact science.
That's
No,
right.
I'm glad you say that. I'm really
That's
glad.
right. It is. The principles, and I do believe that the overall principles are similar and are true, and in my opinion, the best to develop. But
Hmm.
however, be mindful they're principles, not
Hmm.
exacts. But I do. It is interesting. So when I'm working with students, it used to be years ago that I only mainly worked with the student, and so then you would totally like see a lot of your communication was with the student, a lot of your kind of like who made the decision of where they're going to go to college was with the
Hmm.
student. And as the years have gone on, and really and truly, mainly a lot because of this, it used to be when you went off to college,
Oh wow.
you would
Yeah.
not hear from you. The thing you would say is, don't forget to call your mom, don't forget to call home, because they didn't have everyday communication with their kids. Now,
Mm,
with cell phones and FaceTime and things like that, we have daily communication with our kids. And it
interesting.
used to be you wouldn't have communication. Sometimes they wouldn't even hear from their kids until Thanksgiving. And so it was such a big transition for the
Yeah.
family, and that's not how it is anymore. So universities have also tried to adapt. Now a lot of schools will have they will have offices devoted to just parent contact,
Hmm.
parent newsletters, a parent day, a reunion, a family day where everyone, the families get to come to college and see their kid and stuff. So like we have developed as universities have developed on the whole too, to
Mm,
develop into this daily contact with the parents. And we
yeah.
know now that if you don't make contact with the parent and you don't
As an administrator,
as
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and we don't include them in, we're not as likely to recruit them. So that, again, I know the question was about the parenting styles, but that
Hmm.
does show you how things have changed.
Yeah, for sure.
We now you still do have. I work with a lot of kids that will tell me I have no parental support. I have no one that's helping me through this process.
No.
But I would say the majority of my kids, I have to be interacting with the mom and dad too. And at the end
Yeah.
of the day, if the mom and dad really is not for this, then I don't. The likelihood of them coming to Freed Hardman or to whatever school I worked
Yeah.
for is low. So there is that
Yeah.
helicopter parent is how the term we use, a helicopter parent. That helicopter parent is it's hard because when their kids are so used to mom and dad doing everything, mom and dad filling out the application, mom and dad filling out the FAFSA, mom and dad looking at the scholarships. So then when they do get to us, sometimes that freshman year, it's a big transition because they really don't know what
Well,
to do.
that's an important thing though, is because transitions are the times in which you're most susceptible to
Yes,
change.
that's exactly
And
right.
so I think that you really kind of hit hammer on the nail right there when you say like it's a big transition.
Yes.
College in general is a big transition. Going from under mom and dad's roof to being on your own is a big transition, whether you're have parents that did it perfectly or not.
Absolutely.
Whether you are going off into trades or going, I mean, no matter what, when you move out of mom and dad's house is a big transition. And I think that we see that in all things, right? Is that that interconnected time, that transitioning period is when something can go off the rails. I remember just so many people who were sound, who were great in the youth group, who were strong growing
Mhm.
up. But then we get off to college and it's like this
Mhm.
freedom, this, there's so many new,
Absolutely.
and this is
So
something,
common.
this is something that's so different too, that I think we don't kind of talk about enough. It's not even just the freedom and the, okay, they can do these things. There's so many more ideologies.
Yes.
So it's like when you
Yes.
grow up with mom and dad, it's like, okay, this is what mom and dad believe. And then, I have a few friends that believe this and this. But when you go to college,
Yeah.
it's so much free thinking and so much like, oh, these people believe this and these people believe this. And,
Yes.
there's this way of life and this way of life
And this professor and this.
Yes. And I do feel like, and this is just a generalization, I'm saying this from not a position of expertise. So let me be very clear. I do feel like on a whole, colleges have a higher density of um, atheism.
Yes.
And I'm going to use the word liberal, not liberal in the term of political liberal. I'm meaning, which that might be the case also, but I'm meaning more like religiously liberal. And by religiously liberal, I'm meaning either don't believe in God or are more universalist, more these kind of things. And so college campuses are predominantly more skewed than I would say the average population.
Well, it's the culture in a college university. And I'm going to talk on my experience at Arkansas State, not necessarily Freed-Hardeman, okay? But it is encouraged to think different, to kind of, I mean,
Which thinking
professors
different's
go
not a
out of their
bad
way
thing.
in a way
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it's considered maybe expanding their mind. But I can't tell you how many interactions I had with professors that had agendas that would be like, well, I knew I'd get that one. I'd be like, what are you talking about? This isn't like this isn't like a challenge, but it is. I mean, in a sense, like that's they know who they're seeking. They seek out ones that are going to kind of develop different ideologies and different things, and and almost to a point of like purposefully trying to change a person. It's very difficult. And the sad thing, and I don't know if this is the right time in the podcast to talk about it, but the sad thing is our minds are not even fully developed cognitively until like around the age of 25. And so if you think about it,
whoa, I just hit 25.
and so that's my point exactly.
All I gotta say is I don't get to be lumped in anymore.
Yes, but that's my point. Is like we're throwing kids out there at age 18, at age 19, and into an environment sometimes that we're not like, it's kind of stereotyped to get out into college and to kind of be free spirit, experience yourself. Whether it's experimental with drugs and alcohol or experimental with sexual preferences or any
really
of these
just thoughts in general too.
Yes.
Yes. Experimental with the amount of people I see that explore world religions.
Yes.
Who grew up, let's say Christian, or grew up, whatever it may be, who experiment.
Yes.
Well, karma and all this kind of stuff.
And I do think it's important, not to cut you off, but I do think it's important going back to that style of parenting, because if we have a child who has never, like if you come out in, especially at a state school, if you come into a situation at, let's say 18, and you never even realized there was other religions out there. There was other point
Yeah.
of views out there. There was other political parties out there. So it is literally so overwhelming to them. And so personality wise, you might be so afraid that you just kind of one don't succeed at school, or try to find that one little person that's like you and stuff. Or you might be so intrigued that you just are all over the place. And during those
Yeah.
4 years of college, you can be one of anything, any other, month.
You know, to me, it reminds me of a little analogy. You don't go from floaties to deep end.
Yes.
And I think that's really what you're trying to say is that if we have kids in floaties up until the time they go to college, it's floaties to deep end. That's not how you learn to swim.
No.
You go from floaties to
That's
shallow
exactly right.
end,
That's
then to
exactly
kind of
right.
that semi where you can still get back, and then you go to deep end. And I just think that that's really kind of the issue is when you go floaties to deep end, you think you can swim.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big problems too is when kids get off to college, most kids don't go and think I can't do this.
Oh,
Most
absolutely
kids
not.
go and think like, oh, I mean, I'm the kid that can,
Well, and a lot
I
of
grew up-
parents feel very confident. Oh, well, my child is for sure.
Yeah.
They are solid.
But that's the
They
problem
are-
though, is it's a false sense of security
Yes.
because, well, they've been swimming the whole pool their whole life with floaties.
With floaties, and they
that's
don't
the thing
know.
is
They
that
don't
there
realize it.
has to be a time where they learn to swim in an environment through which if they start to sink, they'll get grabbed.
Yes,
And college is not that environment.
Well, and this is a great example that now that you bring that up, when we were in Michigan, one of the classes that was taught at the school that I was at was, I can't remember the exact name, but basically something like creation versus evolution.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember talking to the professor about it, and I thought that's kind of interesting. And again, in my opinion, at the time was kind of a young age. And his comment to me, I have still, all these years later, have thought about. He said, I want kids to question, but I want them to question in an environment that's safe. I want to question in an environment where we can turn to like things that are hard, fast, true scripture, people that are solid, because then once they get out, they're not going to be blown away. They're going to be like, oh, I've heard of this, or oh yeah, I know that. And it's not going to like totally, shake them.
It's so funny because that was literally my next pod. Really kind of the crux of our podcast was to answer what can we do to solve? Because all of this is just chatter if we're not really talking about solutions. And so we want to, and this is real life, real faith. This is a practical conversation. And so that last question was going to be practically, what can we do as members of the church, as parents, as kids? If we've got any teenagers watching, like who are like, I want to preemptively be ready for this. Like, no matter who you are in the church, this really applies to everybody. What can we do for that generation? And you've kind of already started that conversation with, we have to remove the floaties before they get into where they don't have a lifeguard.
That's right.
And we need to allow them to have times to question, times to see other things, but in an environment through which they have somebody to hold their hand.
That's exactly.
They have somebody to help. And I'll be honest, a lot of times that's not mom and dad.
No, not always.
Mom and dad can be helpful in that, but a lot of times it works really well when a youth minister does a study on, creation versus evolution. It's a lot of times it's really helpful when you have a minister going through one of these
or a small group
or whatever it may be, because sometimes it's hard when mom and dad talk about it. It still seems like mom and dad, but still somebody who is trusted and close to the family. And so this kind of starts that conversation, but kind of to open up even broader, what else do you think are solutions to this problem for the church as a whole?
Well, of course, I work in higher education at a Christian school. So I can't say enough about, over the course of my experiences, seeing the benefits of Christian education. Now, obviously, I promote Freed Hardman because, I believe in it, but I also believe in Christian education on the whole. When you're in an environment where not only are you going to see, not everyone's going to have the exact thoughts of you, but they are going to be coming from your same worldview. They are going to be pushing you and encouraging you and praying for you in your same, mindset, in your same worldview, in your family, same, beliefs and things like that. And so to me, when you're sending a child off, I cannot tell you how much pressure students feel from like going into 11th and 12th grade. They must get asked 10,000 times, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to be? What are you going to major
Yeah.
in? What are you going to go off and study? And I understand that that is just a way for older people to try to connect and get to know younger people, but it also puts a lot of pressure on them. And it also makes
They
them
feel
feel
like
like
nothing
they've
they
got to
can do.
figure,
Yeah.
that's right, they got to
Mhm.
figure out everything right now. And to be honest, I mean, that the life, just life progress is you're
Mhm.
figuring it out as you go in some ways. And so there's a lot of pressure in that. But, you know, a lot of times people think they can't afford Christian education or private education. And that's the thing, is that is not true. And that is what I probably would have thought, having 3 kids of my own. I probably thought that in the beginning when we were sending our oldest off to college. And then I felt confident that we had sent them to a private Christian school and the K through 12. And then realized, but you know, then when you came along, and obviously needing to go to a Christian school for, you know, what you wanted to do, it, you know, it did help me to realize it is affordable, and there are things
Yeah.
that we could do to be creative to help
Mhm.
make it. And you also got to think, it's hard to put a dollar amount on it
Mhm.
when you're not just buying an education, you're buying, you know, someone
Mhm.
that's encouraging and uplifting and pushing you,
Yeah.
instead of my experience at Arkansas State, where it was almost professors sometimes would target certain students.
Yeah.
And I saw that with my own eyes. And I just would make me so incensed
Yeah.
of, you know, I mean, even if you don't, even if you think different, you don't have to target them.
Yeah.
And I would see that a lot.
Now, I'm going to go into both sides of this because I think our audience is going to want to know this. There's going to be some who have the ability for Christian school,
Hmm.
and there are going to be some who don't. There are going to be some who are in the church and are working with, you know, maybe a mentor to a kid who's going to a public school, and some who are going to a private school, and that's just way of life. Not every kid will go to a Christian school,
Exactly.
but
And
also
again,
not
we
every
said
kid.
these were principles.
So,
You
but
could send a kid to a
well,
public
that's what I
private
want to
school
kind of break it down.
and
We're going to start
still.
with Christian education,
Mhm.
and then we're going to talk a little bit about public. But because I do think, and this is one of the biggest reasons I had you on the podcast, is I do think. Well, I'll just ask this question real quick. Do you know the statistic on how many kids that leave Freed Hardeman remain faithful,
I know
or
that
do
we
you know the general?
I know we have data on our alumni, and I know that they've been, putting together some reports on how many are staying faithful after graduation. I don't know if the study is complete,
Hmm.
but I do know we have data on the 4 years in college, and we're still sitting at 83% of members of
That
the
was, I
church.
knew it was close to that.
So
I
now I'm
knew it
not
was close
saying
to
day
that.
after graduation, but during their four
And I can
years.
tell you from my experience at Freed Hardeman, that number is not off. I mean, it's now we don't know exactly 10 years after what the number
Right,
is.
and
They're
now
probably figuring it out, but
they are working on something.
I would not be surprised if it was 70,
Mhm.
75.
Mhm.
I mean, and as she already said, at Freed Hardeman currently, from freshman to senior, you have an 84% members of the church,
I think it's
and
83.
or
but yes.
83. But
Mhm.
what's interesting about that is that
Now, clarify, that's not counting staff, faculty,
no,
people
no, no,
that
I
work
know.
there. These are student body.
Yes, yes, student body, 83% members of the church, of the Churches of Christ, right? But what's really interesting about that to me is this: that would not be a weird statistic to say we brought in 83% members of the church, like our freshman class coming in. What's amazing about that
Yes, that's right.
is that the body is, because I mean, yes, I would say we send off most churches, if they send off 20 seniors, 10 of them are no longer members of the church in 2 years.
Mhm.
But at Freed Hardeman, if a church sent you 20 seniors, that means 18 of them. No, that's 90%. 17 of them, give or take,
Mhm.
would be still. So those numbers are good numbers. And so I wanted to talk about Christian because I think that Christian education is a huge um, tool. I don't want to say it's a mandatory thing. I don't want to say
No,
but I
it's
think
principles.
it's a
We're
huge
principles.
tool that, hey, this can be, your
Another
kids can
step.
go, okay, maybe you did keep them in floaties their whole life. Freed Hardeman can be a place where it's not the true deep end, but a place where it's kind of like a deep end, but there's still a few lifeguards.
Yep.
And that's how I kind of see
It's
it.
a
And
great
so
way to say it. Mhm.
kind of to wrap up the Christian education side, and we're talking more from Freed Hardeman. That's Mom's expertise in
Yes.
Christian
Mhm.
education. Freed Hardeman University, that's where I went to college for a year and a half. I also went to Faulkner University, which is a great college. And so our experience in Christian education is more from those two specifically. But I wanted to let you talk a little bit more about Freed. Is there anything else you wanted to add about the the Christian side of the way in which that it helps our kids remain faithful? Because we're going to flip to public education here in a moment.
Mhm.
But I wanted to let you finish anything else because obviously she could talk a full podcast on
Oh,
Freed. That's her
absolutely.
job.
Yeah.
Um, but is there anything else you wanted to add about Freed Hardeman? Just specifically, obviously, it's about one Christian college, not all of them, but obviously that's where her expertise lies.
Right. And I mean, the only thing I could really say if you're where I mean, there's so many things you can say about it, but the one thing that I feel like would maybe kind of go towards this sending your kid off into this environment and kind of what sets the analogy of keeping them from the floaties into the swimming on their own and things. I would say that when you're going to a private Christian school, the environment's smaller. Okay, so
Hmm.
being in an environment that's smaller with the majority of like-minded people,
Hmm.
it is very easy or easier to get connected.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same concept of small groups. Congregations, large congregations have used small groups as a tool to kind of help that connection to stay connected because there's so many people. But when you're at a university with thousands and thousands of students, it's very it's important to find your group. It's
Yeah.
important to find your connection. And I think at one of the private Christian schools, especially in the smaller environments, and a lot of them are in small towns and stuff, that there's not a lot of competition, for things to go do. It creates a stronger community within that student
Mhm.
body. And that is one of the biggest things that Freed is known for in
Yeah.
our Christian schools, is that it just has a really tight student body that,
Hmm.
most of the time are lifelong friends after you leave Freed Hardeman.
Yeah. And I will add to a little bit too. One, it's a great place to find a spouse. That's always a
Yeah.
joke. Is like
Yeah.
uh, people that it's a running joke at Freed Hardeman that you'll find somebody to marry, but that is a huge thing.
Yeah.
So many kids
Matters.
they leave high school, and I was talking about this with one of the kids here not long ago. It's like, who do I date?
Yes.
We have maybe 3 kids in the youth group, 5 kids in the youth group, 8 kids, whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
we'll have a youth event, maybe 12, but still, that's not a large pool of people.
Mhm.
And it's like, who do I date?
Mhm.
Who do I, because I want to marry a Christian. I want to marry somebody
Mhm.
and I was talking to a girl and she was like, I want to marry somebody who's a leader,
Mhm.
a spiritual leader.
Mhm.
But that is a real
Right.
conversation. And
Well, and to be honest, it was a conversation that me and your dad had when we
yeah,
were, we're very involved. Excuse me, let me touch the mic.
no, you're good.
We're very involved in, Carrie started off at Sunset International Bible Institute. And so we're very involved in Sunset too, which is not traditional. It's not like your traditional 4-year institution where you go live on campus and things like that. But when we were in conversations with you regarding it, I mean, we loved, he loved his education there and loved his situation there. But one of the things we were most concerned about is you're going to go there, and who are you going to date? Who are you going to meet?
Yep.
Because it is a different type, where me and your dad went there married
Yeah.
and was able to experience. And so the things that we needed from it, we got. But we were concerned because we knew you needed that, but then you also needed this other
Yeah.
aspect of it.
And that's a
dating and
huge
meeting
piece of
somebody.
Christian education. Not that we're saying it's just for marrying
It's
people or
not.
not,
It's not.
but it is a huge
all on the
piece.
whole.
There is another thing that I wanted to add about Freed Hardeman specifically that I think is so important before we transition, because we're going to transition and it won't be as long on the other side. But I do think also the environment itself breeds good behavior and breeds spiritual growth. So, like, for example, I remember it was cool to be at the Devos.
Yes.
It was cool to be, it's not like I have to go so against the grain to be a Christian.
Right.
And that in and of itself is so helpful, especially when you're in a very formative time.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a formative time, you don't want opposition at every single step.
Right.
In a formative time, it's nice to, okay, yes, I'm kind of finding myself. I'm learning what it means to be away from mom and dad. Do I go to church? Should I go Wednesday night? Should I go
Right.
Sunday nights?
Right.
But when you don't go Wednesday night, everybody's like, dude, where were you?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than like, dude, why are you not going out with us tonight?
Yeah.
And that's
exactly
a
right.
huge difference. So we can't talk high enough about
That's
Freed
right.
Hardeman, about Christian colleges in general.
Mhm.
And when it comes to the money side of things, there's scholarships. There's so many things if you just really look and work with it. I
And
know
work
Freed
with your
Hardeman.
recruiter. Work with your recruiter,
Yes.
because a lot of times people will say, before I've even had a chance to
Yeah.
work with them, like, oh,
Mhm.
well, we can't afford it.
Well, and there's
let's
things
work
like
the process.
there's things like church matches. I know
Yes.
Freed Hardeman offers up to $5,000 in
Yes.
church match. Where like my wife went to Freed Hardeman and she the church gave $2,500 and then Freed Hardeman matched it. So that's $5,000 off.
Mhm.
She didn't pay a penny for that. So there's a lot of different things. The last side of this is public education.
Yep.
What would be your advice if we have a kid who's going off into public
Yes.
education, if we have parents who are sending their kids into public education, if we just have church members who are like, what do we do for the kids that aren't going to Christian college?
Yep.
What would be your advice to, because again, we have to be able to learn how do we retain people going to Christian schools
Yes.
and non-Christian schools.
Absolutely.
What would be your advice for the best ways to retain, to help these kids remain in their faith even when they go to a public school?
Right. And
or public college.
Right. And I when I'm recruiting a student, I let them know that I have a background in a lot of areas. So I am not just solely focused on Freed Hardeman or Christian education, because 2 out of my 3 children went to public schools. And so I do have a lot of knowledge in kind of both sides of it. So I'm glad you asked that question, because I do think you can be very successful going to public school. There are lots of reasons why maybe a private school is not the right fit for you, whether it is on your degree or whether it is on location.
Money is a real thing sometimes.
Huge. Money is huge. So I'm not trying to say, oh, money doesn't matter. Money is huge.
And we
so
all
I
can
actually
only
should have said, I should have said that one first.
We can only afford what we can afford, and we get that. So that's
right.
That's why we're talking about this
That's
question.
Right.
If money wasn't an option, we would say everybody just go to Christian college. But it's like that is a real,
it's a real deal.
factor.
So I do think that I don't, and so that's what I try to tell kids, like, use me as a resource in a sense, like, because I have been on both sides of the coin, if you will. But I do think that students can go and be very successful at a state school or, at a larger university, but you just have to be mindful. It's just like in anything in life, you have to make connections. You have to make connections. So I always recommend to students, for instance, like if you go to A&M, they have Aggies for Christ. If you go to Auburn University, they have the Student Center. There are lots of these universities that have like kind of a Church of Christ Student Center or a college ministry that's associated with the colleges or in some of the local churches around. So, go and have a great experience at this, large institution that you need, but you still find your community. You still
build your own Christian school.
Build your own Christian school. Absolutely. And lots of people have done it. My own daughter did it and had a great spiritual experience and came out very strong. So it is possible. It is possible. You just have to be intentional. You don't just go in and just be willy-nilly.
It takes more effort because you have to choose to find it rather than it's just there.
And I tell kids all the time too, when they're starting, first of all, you are nervous, whether you want to say you are or not. First of all, you're nervous, you're scared, you're awkward, you're uncomfortable. You want to go to everything. So when you decide I'm going to go to church or I'm going to go to the student center activities or I'm going to do this, we have freshman programming on purpose for you to get connected. And the reason why we do that is because we know it's hard for those incoming freshmen to get connected because they are scared, awkward, nervous, and uncomfortable. But my best advice to any person at this age is realize every one of them, whether they admit it or not. So all 500 students or all 1,000 students at that age that's going in and doing this, they are all awkward, nervous, scared, and don't know what to say. So get connected at the same time they are.
And parents, push your kids
to go. Because after you go to every event for 2 or 3 weeks, you'll have already made your community. Then you can
Now, I want to add into this a little bit because depending upon where you are, this is a different environment. So if you go to Auburn, there's a Johnson
those are things
Center.
In the South. Yes, that's
but where, like for example, out
you
here,
go to Fresno
if
State.
you go to Berkeley, or you go to USC, or you go to these places, there's not always a strong student center. There's not. But my piece of advice would be this: is I'm going to add kind of a little layer to this for those who are not in strong areas.
That's a good point.
There is one thing that is always true: there will always be a church.
Absolutely.
And you may not have a student center. You may not have a college group.
Right.
There will always be a church. And here's the beautiful thing about the body of Christ. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. This isn't our study or our conversation, right? But the body of Christ was meant to be a multi-generational thing, multi-generational family. And the beauty of that is that it wasn't meant to be, okay, we have all of our small groups, we have the young adults here, we have
That's
the,
right.
older people here, we
Segregated.
have the,
Mhm.
and then it's just like you're almost like separate churches, but technically one. That's not how it was meant to be. I mean, Titus, he talks about in chapter 2, he says, to my older men, this, to my older women, basically teach the younger women.
Absolutely.
And I bring that up because even if you're in a place where the church is not very vibrant or strong,
That's right.
you can find a church and you can plug yourself in. You might say, well, there's nobody else my age, but here's the thing.
Right.
You don't have to have people your age to have connection.
That's exactly
You don't have to have people your age to grow and to strengthen. And let me just tell you, I have preached at churches with 30 members in
Mhm.
college. I didn't get okay, I go to the big church and everybody's, I am preaching for a congregation with 30 members where on my tryout, they say, hey, do you also lead singing? But let me tell you this, and my wife would go with me and be me and her, and I remember specifically, they would have me come stay at their house in the afternoon.
Yeah.
They would buy me they were $60, which that's expensive for a super specialty bakery pound cake.
Oh, I forgot about
The
that.
Sugary's
Yes.
pound cake, right? They would love on me and treat me great. And
Yes.
here's the thing, I know
Such
without
an
a shadow of a
encouragement.
doubt for all of our college students, if you're making an effort to be a part of even a small congregation,
Yes.
they will invest in you. And it might not be the same. It's not going to be the same as being at Freed Hardeman or
Mhm.
even being at a school that has a big student center.
Absolutely.
But you can make it work even in those environments.
That's
And
right.
so for our parents, for those who are sending family members or friends or kids at their church to public places, encourage them to make it work in their situation rather than just kind of make it a side
Right.
note. Because here's the thing, if we think like, well, they can get back into it after college, they won't.
They might not.
That's not how life works.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like I can just set something like this down and then pick it back
Right.
up. And so we have to encourage more than we encourage social, more than we encourage, being a part of
Good
the football
grades.
games and good grades and these kind of things. And those things are important, don't get me wrong. We have to encourage them to be a part of something spiritual and not just read your Bible.
Right.
We need community.
Yes, you have to have community.
You have to have spiritual community.
That's why the Lord set up the church.
Exactly.
Is
So
because
they
he
need to be
knew
a
we were
part of
gonna
a
need
student center or a church or
community.
something. And I'm going to say this, and this probably isn't, this might not be a good thing for me to say, but it's okay. It's even better for them to be a part of a community that has the same morals and values, but maybe a little bit different doctrinal beliefs. If you're at a church, if you're at USC and there's no Church of Christ Christian Center, it's still worthwhile to be friends with those who are in Christendom and who have similar beliefs and similar morals. And yes, you're going to differ on beliefs. And I'm not saying compromise those. Do not compromise those. But it's better that than all of your roommates are having parties till 3:00 in the morning and,
Right.
Everybody's throwing up all over your stuff. And because here's the thing, it's an environmental thing. Now, obviously the best is people who have the same belief system too, but sometimes we have to figure out as we go. And so I just say that to say environment matters. You can make the right environment wherever you go.
That's exactly right. And I want to give a little bit of a small mama advice on this because when my oldest was going off to school, she was, of course, a preacher's kid and raised in the church. And so no question of whether or not she was going to go to church on Sunday morning. So she goes to the local congregation, and she said that she went in, she sat down, she got up, she kind of stood in the lobby after. Not one person talked to her. So she leaves, and she was kind of feeling discouraged. And she called me. She's like, Mom, they were not very friendly. Nobody talked to me. And da da da. And I said, well, baby, you just have to remember, you're not the preacher's kid anymore. You have to, break that ice. Sometimes, people just don't always know, how to break that advice. And I mean, to break that, awkward feeling again.
Yeah.
And so she said, okay. So she goes the second time. And at this time, her boyfriend went with her, and they announced they're going to have potluck, right? And she says, yeah, we're staying for potluck. We're going to stay for potluck. And sure enough, they go to potluck, and not one person talked to them again. And she just was like, I can't believe, Mom. And so I just basically told her, look, I promise you they're friendly people. And I don't know what this little weird
what the
situation
dynamic is,
but you have to remember, you go talk to people. It doesn't matter. You go up and say hi to somebody, and then that'll break the ice.
Yeah.
And now she finally did it, and she had the best experience
Yeah.
there in her 4 years. But it's ironic because we're so used to our local congregations where we're family with them, where these are
We grew up with
you
them.
grew up with them and you love them and you're in their homes and all of that. And it's very easy, especially if you go to a congregation that's smaller and there's a lot of older people and not younger people, or vice versa. Like sometimes it's very easy to just fall through the cracks. And sometimes members, and I hate to say it, we shouldn't be this way, but we need to be seeking out the visitors. But sometimes that doesn't always happen. But that doesn't mean it's still not a great environment for you. You just have to break that ice. Again, remember, everyone's awkward. Everyone's uncomfortable, and do it in the beginning and it'll be fine. And she did.
Yeah.
And a lot of people
Great
will say, after 2 times, they're gone. They won't try it again. And I'm just here to tell you, do not let Satan win.
Yeah.
That does not mean that's not a good congregation.
Well, just kind of to bring this all kind of to a close, I think we don't really have a timeline, but we're about at that time.
And here I thought I'd have nothing to say.
Yeah, I know, we could talk all day. But what I would say is, honestly, kind of as we come to a close, this is a scary topic for kids, scary topic for adults,
for parents,
for leaders in the church, and just really anybody. This is a scary topic.
Youth ministers. I have lots of conversations with youth ministers in my job.
It's like I do all this work and I work with these kids and and then they fall away. And so,
you made a comment earlier about the youth group and how they're strong in 11th and 11-year-old, 12-year-old, and like, what's the youth group going to look like, in 5 years from now? And then it's still small. I had a youth minister tell me one time that it is very frustrating because at that middle school age, he's constantly going all over town trying to pick everyone up. But then the minute they get their driver's license, they don't come.
Yeah.
And it's like, I did all this work, trying to help you feel committed, help you to feel, connected. And what his solution is as they started getting older, like in 9th grade and 10th grade, started helping them, kind of giving them jobs, like, okay, you lead prayer. Okay. You do a little devotional. Okay. You do this and do that and stuff. And it helped, that helped kids. Anytime you're connected and you kind of have some little bit of a responsibility, it helps. It helps.
Well, I will say, and I think that this is, like I said, this is important to all of us.
Yeah.
This is important to the church. And so this should be important to all of our audience. And I hope today has been hopefully given a lot of good insight into one, that we need to allow them to question, allow them to do these things, but in environments through which that we can help them.
Yep. Do it at the dinner table.
Exactly. And then number 2 is that environment's huge, especially when they're in transitioning times, like college, which is when we lose a lot of our kids.
Yes.
And so, one, Christian college is great. And if you have any questions on that, put it in the comments, reach out to us. We've got so much information on that.
And if you have any questions, not to steal, but like if you have any questions about the college process, I understand that I'm just doing this here to help Seth and his podcast, but I can answer a lot of general questions about any school.
College is a huge,
even if you're not
area of
considering
expertise
Freed
for
or
her,
anything like that, reach out to Seth and I'd be happy to
put it in the comments and we could set that up
for
sure. And then lastly is, no matter what school they go to, whether maybe they don't go to school, maybe they're going to trades
school
or whatever.
Military's the same.
The biggest thing I would say for the future health of someone, and that's kind of the whole conversation.
Yes.
And everything was hinged on this word.
That's right.
Community.
That's right. Community. Help them to get connected.
Community when they're in college. Community, Christian community for them to be able to grow. And Jesus says this, right? In Jesus' prayer in John chapter 17, right before he goes into the Garden of Gethsemane. And he's talking about, what's really interesting, he's talking about, he prays that they be not of this world as he is not of this world. But in that prayer, and he prays for a lot of great things about joy and about, giving us a mission and about us not being isolated. That's kind of the not bubbling, right? But then he talks about, I pray that they be unified. Basically, I pray that they have one another and they can have these relationships, because that was essential for them to be in the world, but not of the world. And so that's really all we're saying today.
That's right.
Mom, I appreciate you so much for being on this podcast. It's been a blessing. Her and Dad are in town for a couple of days, so I'm kind of taking advantage of them being here, doing some podcasts, enjoying getting to have face-to-face conversations that y'all can be a part of. If you have any comments, questions, put them in the comments. I can see them even after this is not live anymore. And then also, please like, comment, subscribe. That really helps our channel. It helps to promote this and boost it. And I hope that you enjoyed this. Let me know if you like the live format. We'll do this more. We can do it online. We don't have to be in person to do live.
Sure.
So let me know in the future. Also, let me know if you like interviews for the lives
Yeah.
or for the real life, real faiths. Because I've done one with my wife. I've done one now with my mom. Let me know if you like that format for the real life, real faiths, and we'll do more of them. But yes, appreciate you being on here,
No,
Mom.
thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
encouraging me. I wasn't, when he asked me to do it, I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I can talk about anything.
Well, and honestly, she does have a lot of expertise into this topic, especially
Mhm.
with kids of that age in that generation. And so she works with, I don't even know how many. I mean,
Yeah.
so many every year. So that's why and she goes to all of the big events throughout the year, whether it be, T3 and all these kind of things. And so
Mhm.
you have a lot of expertise. I wanted our audience to learn from you. And so appreciate our audience. Appreciate Mom for being here.
Yep, you're
This
welcome.
is Real Life and Real Faith with Seth. Thank you.